Hey everyone, Catherine Mattice Zundel here, CEO and founder of Civility Partners, your full-service HR consulting firm focused on building positive workplace cultures. Today I've got Miss Chelsea Grayson, who is I'm a big fan of. She's done a lot of cool things in her career. Just to tell you a little bit about her, she was the first ever female CEO of True Religion. And she also sat on their board of directors. And now she's sort of a professional board member. She sits on the board of Vero Health, Sugarfina, and she was formerly on the board of Delta Dental. She's also a consultant and does a lot of keynote speaking out there in the world with her experience. She's also the former CEO of American Apparel, which is a $650 million manufacturer and retailer, and it had a 50-country footprint, and she helped American Apparel get purchased. But she came into a mess that had been left by the founder and was charged with resolving that mess and fixing up the organization. And she came in and improved the culture, the operations, and the supply chain of American Apparel. She's also an attorney, so she moved into the CEO at American Apparel from the general counsel position, which I think is really fascinating. You don't normally hear about general counsel becoming the leader of an organization. So thanks, Chelsea, for chatting with me today. I'm excited to talk with you about everything going on right now and what organizations need to be doing right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I should say we got connected because you came and gave just an absolutely wonderful talk to the firm where I'd previously been a partner at, and I was inspired to call you and see how we could work together. So yes, kudos to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And this is the first of much working together in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously there's a lot happening right now. Organizations everywhere are in a mess because of the coronavirus. And so I was just curious, what are your thoughts on like the top 3 things leaders should be focused on right now?
Yeah, so in terms of the top 3 things, I guess I would say in short, and then I'll sort of try to break these down for you a little bit. 1, focus on communication, just open, regular, transparent communication. And I'll come back to that. 2, plan for the short term. And 3, start planning for the long term. So I think when you talk about communication, you have to talk about it in respect of 3 buckets of recipients of that communication, right? So it's first and foremost your employees, and a heck of a lot about that, obviously, because of what you do, and we'll get to, we'll talk about culture and employees more specifically a little bit later, but you want to make sure that your employees are always feeling as fully informed and as much in the loop as possible, just so they feel empowered, they're not running around out there panicked, their morale is sufficiently boosted as much as possible. And so, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but as much as possible, you can arm them with the right facts and data so they can actually go out there in the world virtually, of course, and be a great ambassador for you. You can weaponize your employees with information. So communication with your employees, and then it's communication with your customers. It's not just about communicating with them about what product and services you have to offer right now. They already know that, and a lot of them probably aren't going to be very receptive to those messages. But it's communicating with them a little bit of what's happening with you and your business behind the scenes, and even maybe a call to action in terms of, if they've really enjoyed your product or services over the years, how can they help in this time? And similarly, how can you help them? It's a really amazing time as a business leader to develop a different relationship with your customers. So it's not just about how can they help you, whether it's buying your gift cards or continuing to patronize your restaurant on a to-go basis, but it's also starting to communicate with them about, just advice you can give them that's particular to your industry that they might not be getting from other outlets, or just fun little tidbits every day, just any sort of communication that keeps you top of mind versus other businesses in your sector, so that when all of this sort of resolves, whether we're talking about in the recovery period over the next 18 to 24 months, or even when hopefully the economy comes back in a really surging way, you are the company they want to come back to for whatever product or service that was. You're top of mind because they've now engaged in a deeper and more meaningful relationship with you. There's not advocating any company, but I do happen to be a member at Equinox, and they've been doing this really cool sort of daily check-in with all of us, which has a lot of times absolutely nothing to do with staying fit or offering virtual training services or any of the other ways they want us to stay connected as a customer. They've just been giving really fun tips. I mean, some of them a little bit off color in terms of, you know, like how sex can make you sleep better at night or whatever, but, you know, just other sorts of, you know, how can you reach out to people? You know, I mean, I think one of them today was something like, if you're feeling like texting an ex-boyfriend, here's the 3 things you might want to think about before you do that. Just sort of fun ways that they're engaging with us. So there's some companies that are really doing this right. And then the third bucket of folks, of course, that you want to be engaging with are the stakeholders, you know, your market, whether you're a public company or a private company, you know, to be sure you've got partners, vendors, suppliers, shareholders, investors, what have you out there. So you want to maintain a really clear and transparent communication with them because, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about this later on, you never know how they might be able to swoop in and help you. You know, if you're communicating with them about what you're doing, how you might be changing your operations a little bit, you know, where you're struggling, the things that you might need help on, you never know, somebody might reach in with a helping hand. So it's really helpful to continue to communicate with your market as well. And then, so the second thing leaders should be doing right now, like I said, is planning for the short term. I think the 2 most important things right now for businesses to think about are cash flow and cash management. Mm-hmm. So, you know, in terms of cash flow, how can you just continue to generate revenue? Then now is not the time to be thinking about margin or profit. It's really not, you know, so right now, how can you just continue to generate cash so you can make payments to your critical vendors, for example, you know, or you can continue, even more importantly, to make just payroll, even if it's a smaller payroll than it was just a couple of weeks ago because you've been forced to do reductions in force. Mm-hmm. So, you know, cash flow is really important. And we can get into a little bit more detail later, but that also might include, you know, promotional activities, you know, putting things on discount or sale, or even changing up your product line, even just temporarily, just to generate some additional cash. And in terms of cash management, you know, that's the stuff that everyone's doing right now, you know, negotiating with vendors and suppliers, you know, can I get on an installment plan? Can I make a delayed payment? Can I not order? Can I cut that order to much smaller, or can I delay that order that I normally would have made right now? You know, and, you know, so there's all sorts of ways that you can manage cash. Obviously, we all as business leaders know that. So that's planning for the short term. And then planning for the long term is, you know, making sure that you're not that company that gets caught with your pants down when the economy surges back, or even during the recovery period. You know, at some point, people are going to want / need to purchase your services or products again, in whatever quantity that is, and maybe it's going to be a ramp up period, but they're going to want that again. So you need to have your supply chain at the ready. You need to constantly be in communication with your supply chain so that you're ready in the long term when business comes back to supply that demand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that I've been trying to stay in front of my sort of audience and potential clients out there to try to give as much information as I can and stay in front of them. Maybe people aren't buying culture work right now or climate assessments, but you know, I certainly think culture is very important, and you know, it's something I'm focused on. So
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
So let me ask you, how important is culture in all of this? Because you know, everybody's focused on cash flow. What's their long-term plan once they get out of this? So I know I've been spending a lot of time as a leader just trying to understand the financial options that are out there. So all of a sudden, my workload is a lot bigger, you know, trying to glean as much information as I can about what I should be doing. So that makes culture easy to fall by the wayside when you're thinking about layoffs or putting people on furlough and all that. So I'm just curious, you know, because I know you've had to come in and fix some pretty ugly cultures in your career. So how important is culture in all of this? Should leaders be thinking about it?
It is. People are your most important asset. for any company, people are your absolutely most important asset. You want to keep them as happy and safe and healthy as possible. You want to keep them as engaged as possible. You don't want them to become disenfranchised. You want this to be as a stream. It is your responsibility as a business owner or a leader of a business to make this as streamlined as possible. You know, this transition to this new life. So I do think culture is the most important thing to be focusing on right now, because without those people, let's face it, if you're the CEO of a business or the owner of a business, you're not the one that's out there making things happen every single day in the foxholes, you know, at a trench level. You have your employees, they are rolling up their sleeves every day. And without them, your business absolutely comes to a halt. I work a lot with textile manufacturing factories, for example. What happens if the workers don't come in? It doesn't really matter that the CEO is still clocking in every day. If you don't have the workers coming in at those sewing machines, you know, ready to work, you know, you're not going to have anything. So there's things you can be doing right now that don't even take that much effort, you know, to enhance and protect the culture of the company and preempt any toxicity. I mean, these are basics, right? You can make working from home, if it's possible for your employees or some of your employees to work from home, you can make that working at home experience as simple and practical as possible for them. You can forgive the technical glitches or the technical limitations that some of your employees might have. They might not have pretty home offices that they can have as a backdrop for a conference call. They might not have a great computer setup. They might not have a scanner and printer or whatever, you know. You either need to step up and provide those things to them, even if on a temporary basis. There's all sorts of rental companies that provide this stuff. Or you need to forgive them if they need to do calls from a busy dining room table or from their closet, or they might not be able to print things out and mark them up the way you normally would want them to. Things might be delayed. And similarly, if you're flexible with their schedules at home, I mean, a lot of people have kids, so they need to wake those kids up and then spend some breakfast time with them or put them to bed or have dinner time, whatever. You can't demand this sort of, you're paying attention to me 100% of the time when you're at the office sort of standard that you normally would. You got to forgive them for that and be a little bit flexible with them. A lot of people have their parents that they're taking care of right now, so you have to forgive that. You know, you also need to learn, and this is a hard one. This is a really hard one. And for me, it's a discipline I practice every single day because I'm bad at it. Not to hover. So, you know, when you have people at the office, you can poke your head in, you can troll around the office, you kind of generally understand what's going on with people. When they're at home, as a boss, you're sort of like, what are they working on? Are they working on my thing right now? Like, what are they doing exactly? And you start to concoct all of this worry in your head. Focus on what the ultimate goal is that you've set for those employees, whatever the thing is, that the project. Don't focus on their day-to-day activity. Don't micromanage their every second. And this is not just to protect your own mental sanity, but it's those employees want to feel like you trust them.
Yep.
And if you trust them, they will be so happy to go above and beyond for you. As long as they're producing timely and good work product, they will thank you for not hovering. They'll thank you for not micromanaging. They'll thank you for treating them like the adults that they are, you know, to get their work done the way that you've asked. And if you've got employees that absolutely have to come in, you know, I hope it goes without saying, now is not the time to cut corners. Don't do the wink, wink, nod, nod, like, yeah, they're saying social distancing and masking it up and all that stuff, but we're all family here. You know, you can just continue to work as you always did. Employees might nod their head and go along with that because you're the boss, but they're going to resent it. They're going to feel scared. They're going to feel like they got manipulated into doing things that the government isn't telling you to do, or that they don't feel safe doing. That is the quickest way to destroy culture right now. So just, you know, stay in line with, you know, the protective policies that everyone is suggesting, you know, even if it's really, you know, sort of, I don't know, pain in the ass. And then I would say, you know, there's a couple of other things that you can do for your employees right now, and this might not be obvious, but, you know, life long term, like I said, is going to return to normal at some point. A lot of the people that we all have working for us are millennials. They're at the beginning or early middle stages of their careers right now. It's so important for them, for that generation in particular, to feel like you're involved in their career development. that you're mentoring in the right ways, that you care about giving them more things and teaching them things. They all want to feel, again, like you're an active part in their career development. We've all felt that, all of our generations, but this generation in particular really hones in on that. That's something that I'm sure you've seen in all of the polls they really look to. So don't skip out on that. If you had training seminars, if you had, other sorts of continuing education activities planned, these can all be converted to virtual. They were probably all virtual anyways, just keep those going, continue to pay for those. It's a small price to pay for your employees to feel like you're still involved in their long-term career development so that they'll stick around with you both now and also in the long term when we come back, and we're really going to need them to roll up their sleeves and get really active again. And then I would just say lastly, as leaders, just continue to dress the part. Don't show up for things. I mean, there's some clients of mine and there's some employees of mine where they actually feel a lot more comfortable if I show up in a hoodie. And so that's fine. I know that culture and I can do that too. But mostly we shouldn't get sucked into the kind of stay-at-home garb when we're on Zoom or video conferences with our employees, with our teams. Dress the part. If you continue to act like you are still formal and you still take this thing seriously, they'll continue to work in a buttoned up way too, which I think is really important for culture. They'll continue to feel like a cohesive professional unit with you.
Yeah, I like that advice. I had a client's employee call me last week, and she was kind of saying, I'm feeling a little lost at home. I'm in my pajamas all the time and stuff. And I talked to her about that. I said, you got to get up and do your routine, because depressed people stay in their pajamas, or when you're sick, you're in your pajamas. And so you're telling your brain to slow it down, lay on the couch. And so you do. I've had Zoom meetings almost every day, so I'm still getting up and doing all of that. But even if I wasn't, I at least get up and shower and do my hair and put on a little bit of makeup.
Yeah.
And something else you said about the millennials, one of my employees, she's a millennial, and I know the minute she stops learning, she's going to leave me. She loves working here, but you can just feel it. It's that vibe is coming off of her. She needs to learn and learn and learn. And so we talked yesterday about what could she be doing and learning, while she's maybe doesn't have quite as much client work. So she's going to be on LinkedIn Learning, doing some videos and, just kind of plotting out what you have time to learn. So go and do that. And, that'll help you keep your full hours as well, because you'll be being paid to learn.
Love that.
Yeah.
Really good idea. Yeah. I'm going to make a note of that one. That's great.
Yeah. And I guess lastly, one thing I was thinking about too is, leaders all have anxiety also, and everybody is highly anxious right now. And I heard someone speak a couple months ago, and he said something like, you have to lead while you bleed, meaning that whatever you're feeling inside, you have to show up like a leader. And so I just wondered, do you have any kind of quick tips for leaders who are feeling anxious, and how do you show up without that anxiety on your shoulder? Because I think it's really important for your team to not think you don't want them to think you're anxious. They need to know that you're confident.
Yeah, I love that phrase, lead while you bleed. And it's almost kind of like an act as if. The act as if phrase is so corny at this point, but that does come to mind when you say lead as you bleed, And I think, so for me, that means, and I assume this will make other leaders able to sort of drop their anxiety. If you're a leader, for you, it's about being in control, taking action, being powerful in a situation. And right now, a lot of us are feeling sort of powerless and not in control of things. So ways that I've seen leaders of businesses I work with take control of this situation right now include pivoting. Pivoting whatever it is that you've been providing. It's clear that lots of people don't want those things right now, those same products, those same services. They either don't want them, they feel guilty about spending money on them, or they simply can't partake of those services or products because they involve breaking social distancing. So if you as a business leader can take control and figure out how to pivot your offering in this interim period, you are really like leaning into the danger. You're really leaning into the moment, and you're taking total charge of it. So Like, for example, I have an apparel background, as you talked about in the introduction. So naturally, some of my clients are in the apparel industry. And I've got two heritage brands. They've been around forever. They have very specific products on the apparel side that they offer that nobody could care less about right now, and that are way too expensive for anybody to want to buy right now. They've worked with me because I've got a partner that I work with that has an on-demand factory. And so both of these companies have worked with me and the on-demand factory to right now pretty much pare their product offering down to just fashion basics. So not these sort of couture, premium clothes, just sort of toolkits for people to wear at home. Something nice you can wear on a video conference, but some fun jogger sets, maybe a hoodie, a little tank top or whatever, just some fun stuff that's not expensive, that's on demand. So it requires no inventory purchase from these clients at all, which they love, which is totally different from how they normally operate, because most retailers order 12 months in ahead, Yeah. The margin isn't as great for them because it's on demand. It's naturally going to be more expensive for them to buy, but it's something that right now is generating cash for them because it starts flying. Of course, customers want something really easy and basic, just a toolkit they can wear at home. No inventory, and it's a way that they can continue to stay connected with their customer. So I think the leaders right now that are succeeding and aren't feeling anxious are the leaders who are figuring out how to pivot like that in the interim and just take control and not just sort of be at the whim of, well, we're going to put everything 70% off, or we're going to go out there, kind of panhandling for customers. They're actually stepping up and proactively providing something that their customers need at a great price, maybe not at a super favorable margin, but at least they're generating some cash. I also think that, leaders right now can be spending some time with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other resources like that, who are giving really good advice in terms of how to get low interest loans, how to get payroll, missed payroll protection, it might be a little too late for some of that, but not for all of it. There are some really great programs that are being generated out there that are almost like payroll protection insurance, but on the back end. So there's ways that you can avail yourself of government help that most leaders normally wouldn't think of if they're not in a regulated industry, because they run successful businesses normally and don't have to rely on those sorts of things. But it's okay to rely on those things right now, and there's tons of incredible resources that lots of companies are not taking advantage of. Start with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That's a really good place to start. And then I would just say, going back to kind of what we talked about earlier, it's about reaching out to your stakeholders. Again, reaching out to suppliers and vendors and seeing what sorts of deals you can negotiate. You'll feel powerful negotiating those sorts of alternative deals, and you're going to feel like you're helping them, because remember, our suppliers and vendors right now are also struggling. So they've had all sorts of orders just slashed down to nothing. And for a lot of them, they don't have any visibility in terms of when their customers are coming back to them. So if you've got suppliers and vendors you work with, it behooves you to kind of create an amicable relationship with them right now. Be reasonable. Don't just cancel your orders outright, because trust me, this isn't the last crisis we're going to hit. Years from now, there's going to be some crisis that hits your business, and it might just be your business. You're going to need that vendor or supplier to be friendly to you then, and they're going to remember how you treated them now. So I think that's another thing that you can do. And then, like I said earlier, I think it's about just whatever you can do to manage cash management, and cash flow. So I would say for leaders, the way to reduce anxiety is, again, just to be as powerful and proactive as you possibly can, and just sort of take charge of this thing.
I love that. I actually just wrote a blog post about resilience, and that one of the things that resilient people do are take control. And so you've got it. I wrote down a bunch of things you were saying. So that's really great advice. Just don't let it scare you. Lean in and take control, and you'll get through it. So I like that. So I have one last question for you. I know when you were at American Apparel, you came in there and you saw a lot of money sort of being wasted, and you found ways to eliminate some of those costs, and you actually ended up saving many jobs in everything you did when you first came into American Apparel. I'm curious if any of that, sort of applies now? Are there things people can be doing? Obviously, generating some cash flow is going to be part of the answer, but what can leaders be doing now to avoid layoffs or, sort of help be able to keep employees?
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate. This is a little different from that, right? I mean, American Apparel was put together with chewing gum and spit, it was a mousetrap. And so it was, on the outside, it was a gloriously vertically integrated business. We made everything ourselves in and around downtown Los Angeles, but when you really dug into it, it hadn't been put together very well. So there was a lot of low hanging fruit when I came in, really obvious places to trim fat, obvious people that weren't necessary there, obvious jobs that could be consolidated, obvious vendor and supplier relationships that could be renegotiated. We even drilled down to the deeper level of indirect procurement costs. Mm-hmm. So like, who do you buy your toilet paper from? Ooh, I said toilet paper, sorry, is that a sensitive issue these days? Sorry.
You're gonna make some people mad.
Yeah, exactly. But even renegotiating indirect procurement costs, and so there was a lot of low-hanging fruit, and there might be some of that. This might be a really nice opportunity for some businesses to start evaluating how efficient is my supply chain, how efficient are my indirect procurement cost relationships. Are there people who we truly don't need, and maybe this is the time to start to reevaluate the cost structure of the business? But for most businesses, that's really not what it is right now, right? I mean, most businesses were running along at a really healthy clip. They were probably running very streamlined already because we've had some hits to the economy previously anyway, so people learn their lessons. This is at a macro level kind of what the economy is doing to these businesses. So it's really hard. I do think that what I said before about trying to pivot even in the interim, trying to figure out really what does your customer want right now, and pivoting, even if it's not directly in the wheelhouse of what you've been traditionally offering. I do think it's about taking the time to go to ground right now and thinking about long-term, maybe I should pivot generally. Maybe this is a time to really reevaluate what we should be offering on a long-term basis and get your employees to start having really nice go-to-ground thought sessions. Mm-hmm. They want to be a part of this, and they can be a part of a groundswell of something that's going to seed now and then grow in 24 months when the economy hopefully sort of surges back, 18 to 24 months. And so I think it's a really nice way to use your employees just as sort of that thought process. I do love the idea that you had about keeping people on, even if it's at a reduced pay rate, and if they have nothing to do, putting them in training sessions, getting them to acquire new skills, even skills that aren't necessarily part of what they normally do, like public speaking skills or blog writing skills, because then you can deputize them and really send them out. Think about if there were 10 of you and you could be doing 10 of these webinars right now, but it was other people doing it for you that you really trusted.
Right.
That kind of thing. I do think that there are going to be some layoffs. There have been some layoffs already. There's very lucky companies who had amazing cash reserves who, aren't going to have to do it. But, Goldman Sachs is predicting 15% unemployment rates by the end of this thing. Wow. It's just going to be an unfortunate part of what happens. We're not going to be able to avoid all of it. Some businesses are going to close and never reopen. But hopefully we all sort of learn from all of this, and hopefully businesses that come through this, do buy, I'm going to be a preacher on this one, buy the insurance that protects missed payroll. Mm-hmm. Most businesses don't have that. But if you have that right now, you're sitting pretty because you've got insurance that's covering your payroll, at least for a certain period of time. So mm-hmm. You can give the option of that, or do you want me to lay you off so you can collect unemployment? So these are things to think about long term. But yeah, I think, unfortunately, a lot of the traditional things that we look to in a restructuring just don't exist here because this is just a big macro effect. It's not something that a business was necessarily doing well.
Yeah. I do feel like everybody's been really coming together too. I have a business coach, and all of her clients, we're just all in constant communication. What did you hear about this? What are you doing about that? And that's been neat to see that everybody's really leaning on each other to talk about what do we all need to be doing right now so we can all help each other out. So that's, I guess, maybe one silver lining here is that everybody's in the same boat. It's not just one mess company. We're all struggling. So the silver lining is the connections are going to get stronger.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea, for chatting with me. Why don't you tell everyone where they can get a hold of you? I know you've got, I think your website's chelseagrayson.com, but I'll let you share. How can people reach out to you if they want to chat with you?
Yeah, so chelseagrayson.com is a great way. My email address is there, but an even better way is, interestingly enough, my Instagram is just my name, Chelsea Grayson. And if you want to hear more of kind of what you and I have talked about and all sorts of other issues that are unrelated to this, I run a show called From the Office of the CEO. There's a link in the bio of my Instagram, so you can go to all the previous episodes. I think I've got 11 or 12 episodes up at this point. And it's just really easy, 10 to 15 minute snippets, just career, job, business operations advice from the office of the CEO. So yeah, those are probably the easiest ways. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. And I'll put those links in my post here on this. So thank you again, and stay safe. Wash your hands.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Be well.